My son ended up in the ER. I reached out to my mom. Her response? "We're busy with Diana." Then she made a joke about my son, so I quietly cut off their mortgage, car payments, and every bill I was paying. I was the invisible daughter, the reliable one, the one who never caused problems, never asked for much, never got in the way. That role suited my mom just fine, because my younger sister, Diana, had always been the center of her universe. Growing up, it was always, "Diana needs this," or "Diana's going through a hard time." Even when I graduated college with honors while working 2 jobs, all my mom said was, "Well, Diana's thinking about beauty school, so we need to support her right now." I learned early not to expect applause, or attention, or affection really, but I never cut them off. I kept helping, because I thought that's what family does, even when the help was never mutual. Fast forward to now, I'm 32, divorced, and a single mom to a 7-year-old boy named Caleb. He's my whole world. Bright, curious, a little shy, with the biggest heart. I work remotely in IT support for a medical company, and I make good money. Not insanely rich money, but enough that I've been covering some of my mom and stepdad's bills for years. Let me be clear. I pay the mortgage on their house, it's under their names, but I've been covering it since 2019 when my stepdad lost his job. I pay the car payment for their second vehicle. Diana borrowed it a year ago and never returned it. I also cover the internet, cell phones, and utilities. All told, around $2,400 per month. I wasn't the kind of person who made a big deal about helping, but I had to admit the resentment was starting to build up. Every time I signed those checks or authorized payments, I felt like I was invisible to my own family. My mom, my stepdad, heck, even Diana, never once acknowledged the sacrifices I was making. It was just expected of me, like I had an endless supply of resources, time, and energy to spare. I never complained. I never even mentioned it, because that's what family does, right? They help each other, no questions asked. But what happens when the help is never reciprocated? What happens when you're the one doing all the giving and there's no one there to support you when you need it? That question hit me hard, especially after the ER incident. Jack's surgery went well, but the emotional fallout from that phone call with my mom lingered. I couldn't stop thinking about it. I was so angry, so hurt by her lack of care. It wasn't just that she didn't come to the hospital or ask if I needed anything. It was the fact that she dismissed me so easily. I was her daughter, her firstborn, and yet I felt like a complete stranger in her eyes. In the days that followed, my anger didn't dissipate. If anything, it grew. I started thinking about how much of my life I had sacrificed for them, how much I had given up for people who couldn't even give me a fraction of the attention or care that I had always given them. The realization was painful. I had been living for them, not for me. But I wasn't just angry. I was done. Done with being the invisible daughter. Done with being the family's doormat. One night, as I sat on my couch after putting Jack to bed, I made a decision. I was done being the one to hold them up while they did nothing for me in return. If my mom could brush me off so easily in a time of crisis, then she would no longer get my help. The thought of cutting them off entirely felt so freeing. For years, I had been the one bailing them out, keeping them afloat. But now it was time for them to learn what it meant to stand on their own. I didn't owe them anything anymore. The next morning, I didn't hesitate. I started with a mortgage, something that had been weighing on me for so long. I called the bank, explained that I no longer wanted to cover the payments, and removed my name from the automatic withdrawals. My stepdad could find a job, and my mom could figure it out. After the mortgage, I moved on to the car payment. I'd been covering that too, ever since Diana had taken their second car and never returned it. I called the loan company and had the payments suspended. It was time for them to deal with their own mess. By the time I was done, I'd also cut off the internet, the utilities, and their cell phone plan. Every bill that I had been quietly covering for them, gone. I didn't feel guilty. Not at all. But there was a tiny part of me, deep down, that worried about how they would react. Would they even care? Would they notice? Would they be upset, or would they just keep on going, oblivious to how much I had been caring for them all these years? I didn't know, and honestly, I didn't care anymore. But the next few days brought a new level of clarity. I was constantly checking my phone, waiting for the inevitable text or call from my mom, asking what happened, why the bills hadn't been paid. But nothing came. No angry phone calls. No panic. It was as if the world kept turning for them, unaffected by the fact that I'd cut off their financial lifeline. That was when I realized I had been living in their shadows for so long, doing everything for them, and they hadn't even noticed when I stopped. The silence that followed felt like a wake-up call. I had spent years bending over backward, giving my all without even so much as a thank you, and yet they didn't even bat an eye when I stopped. It was as if my contributions had been so insignificant to them that the moment I removed my financial support, it barely registered. But the more I thought about it, the more I understood why. My mom had always treated me like I was just a background player in her life. Diana was the star, the one whose needs always took precedence no matter what was happening in my life. It was the same pattern, only this time I wasn't playing the role of the invisible daughter anymore. A few days passed, and then, just as I had expected, I received a text from my mom. It was short, almost casual. "Why aren't the bills getting paid? We got a notice about the mortgage today. What's going on?" I stared at the message for a long moment, trying to decide how to respond. I knew I could say something passive-aggressive, maybe even lash out at her, but that wouldn't get me anywhere. I had already made my decision. There was no going back. Instead, I took a deep breath and typed back, "I stopped paying the bills, Mom. You and stepdad are adults. You need to figure it out." I hit send and set my phone down, my heart pounding in my chest. The reply came almost immediately. "What do you mean? You can't just stop paying them. We've relied on you for years. We need your help. You know we can face it all alone." I couldn't help but feel a mix of frustration and satisfaction. My mom had the audacity to act surprised, like she hadn't known what I had been doing all along, like the constant reliance hadn't been weighing on me for years. I took a moment before typing my response. "You've relied on me for years, but I've never been asked how I feel about it. You've never even once stopped to consider how much I've been sacrificing. I'm done." That message was the hardest one I had ever sent, but in a way it was also the most freeing. It felt like cutting a weight off my chest, one that I had carried for far too long. There was a long pause before her next message came through. "We don't have the money to pay for everything. You can't just leave us like this." The words hit me like a punch in the stomach. Of course she was upset. Of course she was angry. She had never had to face the consequences of her actions. But I wasn't about to back down. I had given so much, and now I was left with nothing but resentment. I replied, "You'll have to figure it out. I've been paying your bills for years, and it's never been appreciated. I've got my own life and a son to take care of. I'm done carrying everyone else's weight." Then, for the first time in a long while, I turned off my phone. I couldn't keep waiting for the back and forth. I knew I had made the right choice, but seeing my mom's reaction, the panic, the helplessness, was a tough pill to swallow. The next few days were filled with uncertainty. I had no idea how my mom and stepdad were going to handle things. Would they be forced to downsize? Would they finally get their act together and figure out how to manage their finances without me holding them up? I didn't know, but I didn't care anymore. For once in my life, I was putting myself first. And maybe, just maybe, they would finally learn the value of self-reliance. Days turned into weeks, and still I heard nothing from my mom or stepdad. It was strange, almost eerie. Part of me had expected some sort of blowback, some desperate phone call begging me to come back to fix things. But nothing. It was as if I had never existed in their world, as though I had been just another tool they used without even thinking about it. I focused on my own life. Caleb and I had our routine, school, homework, dinner, and the rare weekend adventure when we could get out and have some fun. I threw myself into work, feeling a sense of freedom I hadn't experienced in years. I was no longer weighed down by the constant reminder of how much my family relied on me. My world felt lighter, even though a small part of me still worried about what they would do. But then, about 2 weeks after I cut off the payments, my mom called. I hadn't heard her voice in so long that I almost didn't recognize it at first. Her tone was different, more desperate, more urgent than usual. "Can we talk?" I took a breath before responding. I wasn't ready to let down my guard, but I also wasn't going to just ignore her. "What's going on?" "I need help." Her voice cracked. "We've been trying to figure things out, but it's been hard. The bank's threatening foreclosure, and the car, well, they're coming to tow it in a few days. Please, I don't know who else to turn to." Her words hit me in a way I didn't expect. There was no anger, no blame, just a quiet plea for help. For a moment, I felt a flicker of sympathy. But then, almost immediately, that flicker was drowned out by the anger I had been holding onto for so long. "Mom, I'm sorry, but I can't help you." My voice was firm. "You've had plenty of time to figure things out on your own. I've been paying for everything for years, and it's never been enough. You never appreciated it, and now you want me to jump in and save the day again? I can't do that anymore." There was silence on the other end of the line. I could almost hear her trying to process what I had said. I wasn't sure if she was shocked or hurt, but it didn't matter. I had made up my mind, and I wasn't going back. "I don't know what to say." She finally spoke, her voice quieter now. "You're my daughter. I never thought you'd just walk away like this." I didn't walk away. I just stopped being the one who fixes everything for you. I took a deep breath. "You taught me how to always put everyone else first, but I'm not doing that anymore. I've given enough, Mom. I've been doing this for so long that I forgot what it's like to live for myself. I can't keep doing it." She didn't respond immediately, and in that silence, I heard what I had been waiting for. The truth. I had been carrying the weight of their lives for so long that I had forgotten what it felt like to be free. It wasn't about being selfish. It was about finally putting myself and Caleb first. "I don't know what to say," she repeated, but her voice had softened. "I never meant for you to feel like this. I know you didn't mean it, but that's what happened, and I need you to understand that this is the last time I'm doing it." I could hear her sniffling on the other end. It wasn't the apology I had hoped for, but it was the first sign that she was realizing what I had been trying to say all along. Maybe, just maybe, she was starting to see me for who I was, someone who had been giving, loving, and sacrificing for so long without receiving the same in return. "I'll figure it out," she finally said. "I just don't know how." "I know you'll figure it out. You've got to. You always have." There was no promise from me to fix things, no more empty assurances. Just the truth. They would have to manage on their own. I hung up the phone, and for the first time in a long time, I felt a sense of calm wash over me. I hadn't given in, hadn't taken the easy way out. I had made the hardest choice I could, and I was standing by it. The weight was lifting little by little. My mom and stepdad would figure things out. Maybe they'd struggle. Maybe they'd have to face the consequences of their choices for the first time. But that wasn't my problem anymore. Now it was about me, about Caleb, and about living my life without constantly looking back at a family that had always taken more than they gave. And for once, I felt okay with that. The weeks that followed were filled with a mix of quiet tension and newfound freedom. I didn't hear from my mom again for a while. Part of me expected her to reach out, to beg me to reconsider. But as days turned into weeks, the silence grew. My decision had hit her harder than I realized, and I think she was still processing it. Maybe it was a wake-up call she needed, or maybe she was just too proud to admit she was wrong. I didn't know, and honestly, I didn't care anymore. As for me, life started to feel normal. Not in the way it had when I was always drowning in responsibilities, but in a way that felt right. Caleb and I settled into a routine that was free of stress and guilt. I started taking time for myself. I went for walks, spent weekends with friends, and even treated myself to a few things I hadn't in years. The weight I had been carrying, both physical and emotional, was finally gone. One Saturday, Caleb and I spent the afternoon at the park, just hanging out and enjoying each other's company. As we sat on a bench eating ice cream, I caught a glimpse of my phone vibrating in my bag. I ignored it at first, but then I saw the name on the screen. Mom. My heart sank. It was the first time I had heard from her since our phone call, and I wasn't sure what to expect. Would it be an apology? A plea for help? Or was this going to be one last attempt to guilt me back into my old role? I didn't pick up right away. Instead, I sat with Caleb for a moment longer, watching him play on the swings. Felt like a moment of peace. When I finally did answer, I wasn't sure what I was going to say. I had already made up my mind about what I was and wasn't willing to do, but I wasn't sure how this conversation would go. "Hello?" I answered, trying to sound neutral. "Hey, it's me." My mom's voice was softer than I remembered. There was a vulnerability in it that caught me off guard. "I've been thinking about everything. I want to talk. Can we meet?" I didn't say anything for a moment. I wasn't sure if I was ready to see her face to face. Would I still feel the same anger? Would it be a confrontation I wasn't prepared for? "Where?" I finally asked. She gave me the name of a coffee shop not far from my apartment, a place we used to visit together when I was younger. The idea of meeting there felt right. Maybe this was the beginning of her finally understanding everything I had been trying to say all these years. "I'll see you there in an hour." I hung up before she could say more. I wasn't sure what I was expecting when I walked into that coffee shop, but as soon as I saw my mom sitting at a table near the window, I knew this was the moment where everything would come to a head. She stood up as I approached. Her face a mix of regret and resolve. Her eyes were tired, like she hadn't been sleeping much. "Sit down, please." She gestured to the chair across from her. I did, not sure whether I was ready for this conversation, but I had to be. I couldn't run from it anymore. We stared at each other for a moment, the silence between us heavy and thick. I could feel the weight of everything unsaid, everything that had built up over the years. Finally, she spoke. "I'm sorry." I blinked, surprised. That was the last thing I had expected her to say. "For what?" I asked, my voice quieter than I meant it to be. "For taking you for granted, for not seeing you, for always making it about Diana. I know I've hurt you and I'm sorry. I was wrong." She paused, wiping her eyes. "I never realized how much I was asking of you until I had to deal with it myself. I didn't understand what you were going through, and I know I failed you as a mother." Her words, though simple, felt like a huge weight had been lifted from me. I hadn't expected an apology, let alone one so raw. But as much as I wanted to just forgive her, something stopped me. I appreciate the apology. I do. But I can't just forget everything that's happened. I can't go back to what we were. I can't keep being the person who fixes everything while you and Diana just take. My voice trembled a little, but I pushed forward. "I need something different. I need you to change. And I can't give any more of myself until I see that happen." Her face fell. For a moment, I thought she might break down, but then she steadied herself. "I understand. I will change. I want to. I didn't know how bad things were. I was so focused on Diana, on keeping the peace, I never stopped to think about you." I didn't say anything, but I nodded slowly. I wanted to believe her, but after all these years of living in her shadow, I wasn't sure I could just trust that things would be different now. For the first time in my life, I had to ask myself, do I want to go back to the way things were? Or am I finally ready to let go and stand on my own, even if that means walking away from my family completely? The weeks after our meeting were full of reflection. I had done something I never thought I could. I had finally put my foot down. I had let go of the constant need to fix everything for everyone. And for the first time, I started to wonder if that might be the right decision. If this might be the only way for me to truly heal. I spent days weighing the conversation with my mom. On the one hand, she had finally acknowledged her mistakes. She had admitted to taking me for granted. But even as I processed those words, I couldn't shake the feeling that nothing had really changed. The phone calls from her stopped, and I wasn't sure if that was her respecting my boundaries or just the end of her trying. Either way, life without the weight of their financial dependence on me felt like a breath of fresh air. Caleb and I continued to thrive. I'd never been happier. We spent weekends exploring new places, laughing over silly jokes, and making memories that would last forever. I had rediscovered who I was when I wasn't playing the role of the fixer. Then, a month later, I got another call from my mom. "We're losing the house." Her voice was trembling. "The bank's giving us a few more weeks. I don't know what to do, and I don't want to lose everything." It was as if I could hear the desperation in her words. But this time, something was different inside me. There was no guilt, no urge to rush in and save her. The anger had faded, but it was replaced by something else. Clarity. I wasn't responsible for fixing this. I had to let them face the consequences of their actions, even if it was hard to watch. "I'm sorry, Mom," I said, my voice steady, "but I can't help you this time. You and stepdad are going to have to figure this out on your own." She didn't respond for a long time. There was silence, heavy and thick like the air before a storm. But when she finally spoke again, her voice was different. Not the pleading tone she had always used before, but something stronger, something almost relieved. "I understand," she whispered. I thought I could always rely on you. I didn't realize how much I was asking of you." I nodded even though she couldn't see me. "I've done everything I could. It's time for you to do the same." We both sat in that silence for a few more moments, until I heard her take a shaky breath and hang up. That was the last time we spoke about money, about bills, about what I owed them. In the days that followed, I realized something. I had always believed that being a good daughter meant giving until it hurt, always sacrificing, always fixing. But that belief had only drained me, made me lose sight of who I was and what I wanted. I wasn't just a daughter. I was a woman, a mother, an individual who deserved respect and boundaries. And now, for the first time, I was living my life for me and Caleb. A few weeks later, I heard from my mom again. This time, there was no crisis, no urgent plea. It was just a simple message. She said she was trying to find work and was looking into smaller places to live. I could sense the change in her tone, less dependence, less entitlement. Maybe she was learning to stand on her own, to stop relying on others to fix things for her. It was a small victory, but it was progress. I still didn't know where our relationship would go from here, but I no longer felt the need to rush in and make things right. If she wanted to fix things, it had to be on her terms. And if she couldn't, then I was prepared to walk away completely, without guilt, without regret. In the end, I learned that sometimes the most loving thing you can do is step back, to stop enabling, to stop being the one who fixes everything and let people face the consequences of their choices. My son, Caleb, was watching me. He was learning from me, and I realized that I didn't want him to grow up thinking that love meant sacrificing yourself, giving up everything for others no matter how much it hurt. So I kept moving forward, one step at a time, taking care of myself and Caleb, focusing on our own future. And as for my mom and stepdad, maybe one day we would have a different relationship. Maybe we wouldn't. But whatever happened, I knew that I had made the right choice for me and for my son. And that was enough.